Hello, I'm Christopher, and welcome to another episode of the Cabin Boy Knits Woolcast. In this episode, we are going to be taking a look inside some of my dye pots. We're also going to be looking at some of the dyeing I've been doing. I've been doing a ton of dyeing over the last 3 months, so I want to share that with you. Also, I picked up some great books. They're old books that go way back to the 30s, 50s, 60s. So I want to talk about those books. They're specific to natural dyeing. Also, I went to a great shop in Boston, and so I want to talk about that and show you what I picked up. And also, I want to mention a great program out of the United States from the Livestock Conservancy. So grab your favorite drink, sit back, and I'll share my wool story. Hi, and welcome to What's in My Dye Pot. Today I've actually got 2 dye pots going. I have Brazil wood. Brazil wood is fantastic. It's one of my favorites. Brazil wood, you can get it in a powder or you can get it in bark. And the wonderful thing about Brazil wood is you can use the bark over and over and over again. So once you dye it, put it into your dye bath, you can take it out, dry it out, and use it over and over. It's wonderful. Today I'm using Brazil wood with my well water. And Brazil wood is so interesting because there's so many variables that impact the color. So I'm using my well water. So hard water versus soft water has an impact on the color, and the mordant also has an impact on the color. The mordant I'm using today is alum, and so it'll be interesting to see what color comes out using that. Also, the temperature has an impact on it. So a number of variables to consider when you're using Brazil wood. And the spectrum is so fantastic as well. You can get crimson reds, scarlet reds, peachy reds, and all the way to purple. So the spectrum is great, and that's why I love using it. It's so versatile. So why don't we take a look inside my pot, and I will show you what I've got cooking. So you can see this is a first dye. So the dye is definitely not exhausted, and I've got a couple of skeins in here, and the color is fantastic. It's really nice. It's a scarlet red. I love it. And so when I wash this, it will come out a little bit, not a lot. So the color's not going to change significantly. It's got a nice color now. If I want it to make it darker, what I'll do is I will put it back in again. So I'll dry it out, wash it out, and then I will over dye it, or I'll do another dye, and I can get a darker red if I want one. But really, really happy with that. But I was talking just about the spectrum of colors within Brazil wood, and so we've got examples over here. This one came out earlier today, and I love this color. It's great. It looks like a raspberry. Really, really nice. And then the next one is more of a purple. This was only in once, and also very nice. So these are 2 great examples of some of the colors you can get in the color spectrum within Brazil. The next one I want to look at is indigo, and indigo has a fantastic history. It goes back. It's one of the oldest dyes we've ever used, and it's also been used for currency as well. So indigo's got a fantastic history to it, and I could spend hours talking about it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an episode entirely on indigo dyeing, because everywhere from creating stocks and using the stocks to create your dye bath, there's so many variations, and it's fantastic. And it's magical. I think it's truly magical. What I wanted to do though was share with you today the magic of indigo, and what I'm going to do is we're going to look inside my dye pot, and then I'm going to take out a skein of yarn, and you will watch it turn from green to blue. And it does that because once the indigo skein hits oxygen, the color turns from green to blue, and it's quite spectacular. So come on over and have a look. So when we look inside my dye pot, you can see that it's a healthy dye pot, because what we have going is, you can see the little metallic formations on top. That's a good sign. It's a good sign that it's healthy. Also, it's very important that you don't create bubbles in here, because bubbles create oxygen, and we do not want oxygen in this dye pot. So I'm going to go down, and I actually had a string tied to the skein of yarn, which came off, but I'm going to pull it out now so you can see how green it is. So this is the green skein of yarn. I'm going to pull it out, and you can see it turning from green to blue. And it's doing that again because it's hitting the oxygen in the air, and that's changing the color from green to blue. And so one of the wonderful things about indigo is if you're not thrilled with the color and you want a darker color, you can redip it. And you can redip it as many times as you want and you'll get a more intense blue. So it's fantastic. You can see, just hold up the very bottom because it's, see, you still got, that's what it came out as, and this is the color that it is now. It's fantastic. This will turn as dark as this. So indigo is fantastic. I love dyeing with it. I'm looking forward to spending a whole episode on it as well. So that's it. That's what's in my dye pot, and I'd love sharing it with you. Take care. Bye. I've been doing a significant amount of dyeing over the last 3 months in preparation for a couple of shows. So I want to talk about the shows and also give you a look inside my dye pot and talk about some of the yarns that or the dyes that I produced. So the first show was at a yarn shop called Yarn It, and it is in Cobourg, Ontario, which is about an hour outside of Toronto, depending on the traffic, an hour and a half, and it's probably around 45 minutes from my cabin. I've taught a couple classes there. I love the store. When you walk into the store, you've got yarn around the perimeter of the shop, and then she's got a great selection as well. And then in the middle of the store, there are a bunch of chairs, nice, comfortable chairs. And I love it because the store has a great feel to it. And the owner, Kathy, is a wonderful woman. And her personality, you can feel her personality in the store. And the customers oftentimes are sitting in the middle knitting and chatting. So I love it. It's got a great feel to it. And I've asked a couple of the customers, why do you come to the store? And they said it's to get away and escape for a few hours from the family and get away from their husbands or their kids, or just it's an opportunity to relax and socialize. And it's a great environment. It's a terrific part of the community. So I was there. Kathy asked me to do a trunk show. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. So I prepared some yarns, and I had a couple of things I wanted to focus on. First, I thought, I will pick some Canadian sourced fiber, which would, in this case, was all wool, and I will use a couple of interesting colors. So this one, well, take the first one. This one was cochineal and alum, and so you can get so many different colors. You can pull so many different colors out of the cochineal, and so this one I did a bunch of pinks. This was with wild grape and blue spruce. So it was the blue spruce it gives it that blue tinge to it. And this was logwood and wild grape. And you can see that the logwood's great to dye with. And so is the wild grape, and so the wild grape gave it a little bit of a bluer hue to it. And then this one was Brazil wood and birch, and so I dyed this twice. Happy with the results. And this one was wild grape and alum. I used alum for mordant, and this one was also blue spruce as well. So, it was a great show. It was nice to see so many people coming out to it, and they were so supportive and so wonderful. So it was. I had a fantastic time. And again, thank you, Yarn It, for asking me to do the trunk show. I really enjoyed it, and I loved chatting with the people. The second show I had was the Marketplace in Toronto, and it was put on by the Upper Canada Fibre Shed. And the Fibre Shed is, if you make a circle, right in the middle of the circle is Toronto, and around the circle is 400 kilometers. So when all of the alpaca farms, sheep farms, knitters, dyers, spinners, and weavers and mills that are inside this fibre shed, qualify for participating in the marketplace. And so when you think about it, The yarn I had to source was in the fibre shed, and the mill that processed the wool has to be within the fibre shed, and the botanicals that I pull that using to make my dye bath have to fall locally. They have to fall within the fibre shed. And when I look back at Yarn It, I had a lot of local things that I used: blue spruce bark, birch bark, chestnuts, walnuts, all those things. But I also used logwood, Brazil wood, and cochineal, and those are not local. So I had to think back and figure out what I was going to do in order to get the yarns ready for the show. And the show was only 3 weeks away. And in between that, I was going to be in Boston, and also I sold out all of my fingering weight at the trunk show. So I didn't have any fingering left, and that definitely was the most popular thing at Yarn It. I had a little bit of the worsted weight left, but I had to figure out what colors I was going to bring to the marketplace. And so went back into the cold room, and I had lots of marigold, and I had some onion skins. But then I also needed another color because I've got yellow. So I was looking all over for my nuts, because I store my nuts every winter because I don't want the squirrels to find them, and the squirrels have a habit of breaking into the cabin and stealing my nuts. So hunted for those. I was able to find black walnut and chestnut, which are great. They look quite nice, especially when you dye them separately, but on the same skein, they look quite nice. So found those two, and then I found acorns as well, and I'll get to those in a minute. So I had my nuts. I also had my marigold and onions skins, and great, it was going to be brown and yellows. I wanted to have another color. I needed another color, and so I went out to check outside, and I had stored a bunch of wild grapes. And the wild grapes had been sitting there since late October, early November, and they were frozen. And so I thought, well, this will be interesting. Let's see what happens with them. And I was able to pull some fantastic colors from the grapes. And I was able to pull some blues and purples, and with the yellow, I had some fantastic greens. So I was quite happy with what I found. I was ready to get my dye pots going. I was about to put the mordant in. And a mordant, again, is it's the agent that you use to bind the color with the yarn, and and you have to use it if there's no tannin in the color that you're using, because the color just won't stick. It'll look fantastic when you pull it out, but then it will wash away. So you really need to have a mordant. And so I thought to myself, well, I can't use alum, which I use a lot, and alum is the same alum that you use in pickles, but it's not local. So I wanted to be true to the guidelines. And so I found I had two options. One of them was the oak gall, and I live in the Oak Hills, and I'm surrounded by oak trees. So if you get the oak galls, what you can do is take them and grind them, and you can use those as a mordant. They're very difficult to find, though. In fact, I'm surrounded by thousands and thousands of oak trees, and it was difficult finding them, but I did manage to find them. So you grind those up, and you can use that as mordant. And then also, the squirrels didn't find these, but I have acorns as well. And so I was able to use the acorns as a mordant. So that was great. I was quite happy. So I wanted to show you some of the colors that I had from it. This is, well, I'll start with the marigold. The marigold, look at that color. The marigold came out, and it's absolutely a beautiful, beautiful yellow. And the yellow, obviously, when you do more and more dye baths or exhaust the dye baths, they're not as vibrant. But this was from the first dye bath, but I was really happy with that. And I can't take all the credit for it, because this is BFL and Blue-Faced Leicester. And Blue-Faced Leicester, the sheep really pulls out the color nicely as well. So thank you to the Blue-Faced Leicester who provided this, but I was very happy with this yellow. And the yellow was just the base for a lot of my other colors. I had look at the blues in this. This is wild grape, and this is also on BFL yarn. So that came out quite nicely, and very happy with that one. And I think this is just another version of it. I just dyed it a slightly different method, but using the same ingredients. And I got completely different colors. And then this is the one that I wanted to show you. This was I think a skein that I used earlier on. I sold out of all of my fingering. This was the last one I had left. But the colors, you can see the chestnut and black walnut in here, and the birch. So I'm happy with. I like this. The reason I like this is because I've immediately thought of a pattern that I can write using these colors. So stay tuned for that. But very, very happy with this. So that was my venture down into the marketplace. In terms of how I did at the marketplace, I was very happy with the sales. Equally happy with the people that I got to interact with. I met two great women from Beaver Valley who have an Icelandic sheep farm, and so I ended up buying some yarn from them. I also bought a carder as well. So I did spend money, even though I was supposed to be selling my yarn and making money, but I had a great time. Oh, the lesson I wanted to share with you was I learned a couple of things going through this exercise. You know, I was a little stressed at the beginning, trying to figure out what I was going to do, and would I have enough yarn to sell. And it really forced me to take a slightly different look at yarn preparation and yarn dyeing, because, you know, I take for granted so often the stuff that I can pull out of my kitchen cupboards. Like alum, for example. And so going through this exercise and having to really look at what you can do to use yarn, like I probably wouldn't be running to acorns and using those as a mordant, or the oak galls, but I will do that now in the future. So it's definitely had an impact on the way that I will be preparing my yarn. And I loved it because it gave me greater appreciation for what life must have been like prior to being able to import goods. So it was, thank you Upper Canada Fibre Shed for that. It definitely had an influence on the way that I will be dyeing yarn going forward. So again, you know, I learned a lot. Oh, the other learning that I had was the birch bark I take for granted, because I can just walk out into the back in the forest, and I've got a number of fallen birch trees because the soil is sandy, and pick up birch bark from the fallen trees. You never pick birch bark from a live standing tree. And so I just go out there and pick it whenever I need it. And when I went out to pick it, I realized that I had 2 feet of snow, and so I thought, okay, well, how am I going to get my birch? And so I took the dog out and a shovel, and I remembered where the fallen trees were, and had to dig up the birch bark, the fallen birch bark, and take it back. And what I did was, in terms of extracting the bark from it, and in some of the dye baths, I put the entire piece of birch bark tree in the dye bath, and the steam helps so that you can slide off the outside birch bark. Anyway, my lesson learned here was that when I store my winter wood out in the woodshed, I will start storing my birch bark as well, because it wasn't a lot of fun having to dig around and trying to figure out where the buried birch bark was. It was kind of like digging for a treasure, though, so that part was fun, but I've learned to do a better job of storing my birch bark. Last week I was on my way back from Toronto to the cabin, and I passed a town called Port Hope. And in Port Hope they have a fantastic yarn shop, and it's the Black Lamb. And it's run by a woman named Lori, and she's phenomenal. She's an encyclopedia. She's one of those people that knows everything about yarn and dyeing and knitting. She's an incredible resource. Anyway, I went over to visit her, and we started chatting. She asked what I was doing, and my summer is completely booked. So I said I've got a lot on the go this summer, teaching at a lot of festivals. And I was mentioning one in particular at the Kawartha Yarn and Fibre Festival. I'm actually giving a lecture on the history of Canadian knitting. I'm also doing a dyeing class as well. And she said, well, come with me back into the dye studio. So we went back into the back of her shop, and she pulled out, and she said, God, this is heaven for so many people. It's just wall-to-wall yarn everywhere and boxes of yarn, and it's fantastic. Anyway, we were there, and she said, look over there. And so there's a box, and it had a bunch of books in it. And I'm a huge reader. I love books, and this was a bunch of books on knitting and dyeing. And so I went through her box of books and pulled out a few of them. And so I haven't read all of them yet, but I have quickly looked through some of them, and 3 of them I just wanted to highlight. And I'm looking forward into becoming very familiar with some of these books. This one is Lichens for Vegetable Dyeing by Eileen Bolton. This is from the US, Oregon, and it was printed in the 1960s, I believe. So yeah, I'm looking forward to looking at this book. It's got some great photos in it, and it's really interesting the way that it's structured. So looking forward to becoming familiar with this book. The other one is from the UK, and it's from the 50s by Elise Davenport, and it's called Your Yarn Dyeing. This is another one. It's actually got chapters in it, and so it'll be interesting to read how Eileen has explained the natural dyeing. The gem for me in all of this is a book that I wanted to read a little excerpt from you, but I'm so excited about this. It is a handbook of Canadian dyeing, or the handbook of Canadian dye yielding plants and recipes. Very thin. Is printed in the 1937, and it was printed in Toronto. And I just want to read the foreword to you. Since the discovery in earlier times of vegetable dyes, little or no change has taken place in their method of application. In the UK islands, these processes, together with the art of carding, blending, spinning, and weaving, are passed down from mother to daughter, so that all the women there are skilled in every branch of the work. Many of the rock plants and seaweeds used to obtaining these beautiful shades for which the tweeds of the Western Isles are famous, we found on coming to Canada, cannot be duplicated here, but we have a great many native plants which can be used successfully and with delightful results. This handbook contains a list of these, including the colors obtained from them, and several basic recipes for their use. And on the next page, it gives a plant list of its categories by color, the name of the plants that you can use to extract the color, and then some remarks. And so she's got everything from black, brown, crimson, green, flesh, gray, blue, yellow, purple, dark orange, and orange. I wanted to read a couple of them to you. Blacks usually is sometimes difficult to get in natural dyes, and so she's using sumac root and hibiscus, as well as alder bark, oak bark, and common dock. Green, iris leaves, and wind bark. And the purple, she uses blaeberry with alum. And the red, she's using blueberry with alum, bloodroot, root of dandelion. And blues, she's using cornflower and chicory flower. So I'll be really interested in trying out some of these recipes. I think it's fantastic. So this is a gem for me. I'm probably going to photocopy the book. It's only 8 pages. But I'm so happy that I have this, and I can use, I'm going to try out some of the recipes this summer. So what a great find. Thank you so much, Lori. I really appreciate it. I was in Boston recently, and when I was in Boston, or when I'm in any town, I will check out the local yarn shops. And so I always like it or get excited when there's one that I haven't seen before. And I used to spend a lot of time in Boston, so I figured I knew all the yarn shops. But one of them I wasn't familiar with was the New England Farm and Fibre, which is in Boston Public Market. And I'm so excited about this. This is a great store. It focuses on small farms, and the farms use local labor or local mills, and their breed specific yarns as well. I'm so excited about this because it's really promotes the local sheep farms. And so managed to buy a couple of things. These are these are fin sheep, 100% fin sheep, 2-ply sport. And this comes to you from Boondoggle Farm in Vermont. They're really soft and squishy. They're beautiful. They smell great as well. So really happy to pick these up. The next one is from Savage Heart Farm, and this is also in Vermont. And this is what is this? This was Cordell and Cornwall. So that's nice. This is a nice yarn as well, nice and soft, and definitely be able to use this. I've already got this. I think I'm going to use this in one of my toques. And then the last one I bought is from, this is a big one. This is Foxfire Fibre and Designs. And this is 100% Cornwall wool. And it's 3-ply worsted. And it's 300 yards. So it's great. Really happy with that. So they have a nice display, and it's in the market, Boston Public Market. So when you go there, you can grab something to eat, look around. There's a couple other shops too, but this one I was really excited about. I love supporting our local farmers, and this is what they're all about. So I encourage everyone who's a knitter, who's interested in wool, when you're in Boston, to check them out. They are in Boston Public Market, and they are New England Farm and Fibre. For those of you visiting Boston as well, there's so many fantastic things to see in the city, but make sure you check this out and support your local farmers. I wanted to take some time out just to thank everyone for all of the comments that you've been providing. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the pictures that you've sent as well. It's fantastic. I love the feeling of connecting with you. So it was quite wonderful. I received an email recently, and I'm very appreciative of this one, because it gives me an opportunity to talk about Yarn Vibes again. Yarn Vibes is from Ireland, and they were the first vendor that I happened upon at Vogue Knitting Live. And I was in the mindset of, I'm going to buy an American yarn, very excited about that, focused on, connecting with some of the farms specifically, and, really excited. So I was attracted to the colors of coming from Yarn Vibes. And so that's what drew me in. And so I started talking, and the first thing I noticed was the Irish accent. And so I thought, well, this is interesting. And then as I got into the booth and started looking at the yarn, getting an understanding of it, and talking to the people who were working there, that this is from Ireland. And I mentioned this, I talked about this in the last episode. But what I did was, when I was explaining this, I completely screwed up on the location of where they were from. So apologies to Yarn Vibes for that. And I was so confident that I thought you were from Northern Ireland. And so when you sent me the email and said, thank you for talking about us, by the way, we're from around the Cork area, which is not Northern Ireland, I just thought, how was I so sure, or how was I so positive, or why was I so confident that you're from Northern Ireland? And so I was racking my brains trying to figure out who told me that's where you were from. And then I finally concluded that no one did. I just finished watching Dairy Girls on Netflix, and I binge watched it right before I came to New York to Vogue Knitting Live. And that has to be it. That has to be the explanation. So Dairy Girls is fantastic. Highly recommend the show. It is located in Northern Ireland. And so I guess when I walked into your booth, I don't know why I immediately thought it was Northern Ireland. But again, apologies, you're in the southern part in Cork. And so, the thing that I loved about Yarn Vibes is that the colors are fantastic. They are heavily influenced by the colors around them, their environment. They use locally sourced wool, so it's all Irish wool, and they have it processed locally as well. The colors, the fantastic colors that come out, are from local dyers, and the designs that they have for their yarn are from local designers as well. Oh, and in the process of the dyeing, they are very environmentally conscious, and try to leave as small of a footprint as possible. So I love their story, and sorry for the screw up on my end with respect to your location, but it did give me an opportunity to talk to you again about that. Also wanted to mention a fantastic program out of the United States. It is the Livestock Conservancy. And the Livestock Conservancy is a nonprofit, and it basically promotes heritage breeds, so heritage cattle, heritage horses, heritage sheep. And they've got a fantastic program out right now. It's a passport program, and it's called Save 'em and Shave 'em. And I first heard about this through a podcast, Sheep Spot. And Sasha was talking about it. I think it's episode 37. So I will put a link to that. But anyway, this is a fantastic program. You purchase a passport, and then you have an opportunity to purchase fiber from various heritage sheep farms. They've got a map of it, and it's fantastic. So you can figure out which heritage sheep you want to purchase, but they encourage you to shop at as many as possible. So it creates a demand for heritage sheep, and I think that's fantastic. And so if you're in the United States, I encourage you to check it out. If you're not from the United States, I'd encourage you to check it out as well. Unfortunately, the program is only for U.S. citizens, so I'm going to call them and have a conversation around that. But I thought, well, even if I can't participate, I can at least take the ideas back, and I will be having a conversation with Canadian Fibre, or the Upper Canada Fibre Shed, to talk about this program. I think what I'd like to do is not only have it to fiber artists, but bring it out and have it for knitters, crocheters, spinners, weavers, and dyers as well. I think it's fantastic. Anything to promote the heritage sheep. I'm thinking that within the Fibre Shed, you could even hold it within the Fibre Shed and have access to all of the farms, the alpaca farms and sheep farms, so that you're really promoting the Fibre Shed. So this is a fantastic thing. I get excited when I see things like this. So thank you so much, Sasha and Sheep Spot, the Sheep Spot podcast, for talking about it. It's great. So I encourage you to check that out. I will put a link both to Sheep Spot and to the Livestock Conservancy as well. I want to wrap up the episode by thanking one of my fiber heroes. And this episode's fiber hero is a guy that I met probably around 8 years ago at the first men's knitting retreat. And I was a little nervous about going. I didn't know what to expect. And so when I got there, again, I didn't know anyone really. And there was this guy who he was incredibly approachable, super, super nice guy, and his name's John Crane. And so ever since then, we've been great friends. And John is an accomplished artist. He is a phenomenal designer, and he has a huge passion for wool. And it's his last project that is just, I find, incredibly phenomenal. And so basically, over the last 3.5 to 4 years, he has been sourcing fiber from as many breeds of sheep as possible. And he's well over 70 right now, 70 breeds of sheep. And what he does is he sources the fiber, receives the fiber, and has it processed into yarn. And so he'll have a card. The card will have a picture of the sheep. It'll have information about the sheep, where it's from, micron count, all the things that you want to know about the sheep. And you've got samples of the fleece, and then you have a swatch that's been knit up using the fleece. And it's fantastic. Incredible exhibit. He showcased it last year at the men's knitting retreat. I fell in love with it. I asked John to bring it up to Canada, and we had an event. I called it Wool Kiki at the Cabin, and we had people show up with picnics and they camped out and for the day and knit and crocheted and just hung out and checked out his exhibit. And then we had professors from universities and farmers and designers all show up to see this exhibit. It was phenomenal. It was really, really great. And since then, he has taken the exhibit and gone around to various high-profile events in the U.S. And I think last month he was at Brooklyn Tweed as well, showing his exhibit. So I feel incredibly grateful and enriched because of John Crane. You know, I've definitely benefited from his passion for wool, and as have so many people. He's touched so many lives through his passion of wool, and we need more John Cranes in the world. So John, I just wanted to thank you for being this episode's Fiber Hero. Everyone, I just wish you a fantastic week, and I look forward to your comments and speaking to you in the near future. Take care. Bye-bye. Anyway, I have a guest apparently.